Hey everyone and welcome. Today we're going to talk about something that hits all of us right in the wallet, taxes. We all pay them, but it turns out where you live can totally change just how big of a bite they take. So let's find out where your money might actually go a little bit further. So let me ask you this, where does 10% of your income really go? Well, on average, when you add up all the state and local taxes, property, income, sales, it comes out to about 10% of what you make. But what if I told you that in some states, that number is cut almost in half? Yeah, the difference is pretty staggering.
And this chart right here, it really puts that into perspective. You see the average American paying that 10%, but then look over at the lowest tax state in the entire country, they're paying less than 5%. That is a huge difference in your take-home pay. So how do they do it? Well, let's find out as we count down the top 10 states with the lowest overall tax burdens.
All right, kicking off our list at number 10, we've got the gem state, Idaho. This is our entry point into the world of low-tax living.
So what's Idaho's secret? Well, it's all about one word: balance. They don't try to get rid of any single tax. Instead, they keep moderate, flat rates on income and sales, and they pair that with a really modest property tax. By just spreading that burden out and avoiding things like an estate tax, they keep the total bite on residents to a very manageable 7.54%.
Okay, moving on. Now you're going to start to see a pattern emerge with our next two. Both our number 9 and number 8 states use what we're calling the energy playbook to keep taxes down for their residents. Coming in at number 9 is Oklahoma. They keep their income and corporate taxes super competitive. And their secret weapon, it's the energy sector. The state charges what's called a severance tax on oil and gas that's pulled from the ground. And get this, that one tax alone accounts for nearly 13% of the state's entire revenue. That lets them subsidize lower taxes for everybody else.
And just so we're all on the same page, what exactly is a severance tax?
Well, it's basically a fee a company pays for severing natural resources from the earth. And as you'll see, it's the financial engine behind a few of the states on our list today. All right, at number 8, we have North Dakota, which also leans heavily on its oil revenue. And that allows the state to have this incredibly low top income tax rate of just about 2.5%. It also helps that they have a pretty small population, under 1 million people. It just means the cost of running the government is spread thinner, so there's less need for high taxes on individuals. Now let's switch gears a bit. Our next two states have gotten really creative. They've developed these unique, niche models that don't rely on natural resources at all. They found some pretty interesting ways to fund their governments. At number 7 is Delaware. Now, the first thing you probably notice here is that big, fat zero next to sales tax. So how is that even possible? Well, Delaware is what's known as a corporate haven. Tons of businesses incorporate there, and the state basically funds itself through all the fees and franchise taxes on those companies. That means they can completely spare their residents at the cash register. And at number 6, we've got the Sunshine State, Florida. Famous, of course, for having no individual income tax. The strategy here is actually pretty simple. They export the tax burden. With millions and millions of tourists visiting every year, the state leans really hard on its 6% sales tax, which is paid by visitors and residents alike. And that lets Floridians keep every penny of their earned income. All right, we're breaking into the top 5 now. And here we find 2 more states that have completely gotten rid of their income tax. But as you're about to see, they get to that goal in very different ways. Okay, South Dakota, at number 5, is one of the most tax-friendly states you can imagine. We're talking 0 individual income tax and 0 corporate income tax. So you've got to be wondering, where does the money come from? Well, they rely on a mix of sales and property taxes, and they keep costs way down by running a very lean state government. And then you've got number 4, Tennessee. They also have no tax on your paycheck, but their method is totally different. The state's whole philosophy is to tax what you spend, not what you earn. And to make up for that lack of an income tax, they have one of the highest combined sales tax rates in the entire country, averaging around 9.5%.
All right, we've made it. We are at the top 3. And let me tell you, each of these states has an incredibly low tax burden, but their methods for getting there are a true study in contrasts.
Landing in the 3rd spot is the Granite State, New Hampshire, which is a real outlier in its region of New England.
So New Hampshire's model is all about a direct trade-off. They proudly have no statewide sales tax and no tax on your wages. But, and this is a big but, there's a catch. They fund their local governments and schools with some of the highest property taxes in the entire nation. So you save a bunch at the store, but you pay a lot more on your home.
Our runner-up, taking the number 2 spot, is a state that basically combines a bunch of the low-tax strategies we've already seen into one really powerful package, Wyoming.
Wyoming is, you could say, the ultimate energy state. It's got no individual income tax and no corporate income tax. And it can afford to do this because it funds its government almost entirely with those severance taxes we talked about, levied on its huge wealth of coal, oil, and natural gas. It's the energy playbook, just taken to its absolute extreme.
And that brings us to the very top of our list. With a total tax burden that's less than half the national average, the number 1 state with the lowest taxes in America is Alaska. It is the only state in the entire country where the total tax burden drops below 5% of personal income. That is an absolutely incredible achievement.
So how on earth do they pull this off? Well, like Wyoming, Alaska is funded almost entirely by oil revenue. But they take it one giant step further. Not only do they have no state income tax and no statewide sales tax, but the state actually shares its oil wealth directly with its citizens. Every year, residents get a dividend check from something called the Alaska Permanent Fund. The government literally pays them to live there.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? It's that there's no single magical path to low taxes. It is always about a trade-off. You can do the Florida model and tax the tourists with a high sales tax, which is great for higher earners, or you can do the New Hampshire model and tax your home with high property taxes, which is better for people who spend a lot. Every single low-tax strategy requires choosing what or who to tax instead.
And this really brings us to the final and maybe most important question. While these states offer a much lighter tax burden, that often comes with consequences for public services, things like schools, roads, and social programs. It really makes you wonder, what is the right balance between keeping more money in your own pocket and investing in the community as a whole? That's definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us.